Hello, everyone. I'm Sherry Simmons.
And I'm Jan Simmons.
We are a mother-daughter duo, and we travel the country speaking on mental health and resiliency. And we want to thank you for being a part of our summit, Surviving and Thriving During a World Crisis. We have several experts that we've gathered together to speak on topics that we think will be beneficial for all of our listeners. And we're really excited about our next guest, Dr. Rhoberta Shaler, known as the Relationship Help Doctor, provides urgent and ongoing care for relationships in crisis. Her mission is to provide insights and information and inspiration to clients and audiences to transform their relationships with themselves and other humans. Boy, the United States Marines have sought her help. I want to hear more about that. Dr. Shaler focuses on helping partners, exes, and adult children of the relentlessly difficult, toxic people that she calls hijackals. She is the author of 16 books. Welcome to our summit.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be here.
We want to start by just jumping right in here. Tell us a little bit about your background to start with.
Well, I was born to two hijackals and I'm an only child. That was the start of it all. And into a family full of hijackals. In fact, there's not one of them that isn't. And it's a large family, wow, except me. So that happened, but I was on my way to medical school and I found out I was expecting my first child. So I shifted into psychology because I was always going to be in the helping professions. And then I chose to specialize in dealing with these delightful people I call hijackals.
And you even trademarked this name, hijackal.
Oh, sure, because I created it.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit, narcissism has kind of become this buzzword over the last 10 years. And I see the label overused sometimes and misused other times. What are the characteristics of a hijackal, a narcissistic personality disorder?
Well, hijackals are not only narcissistic, they can be sociopathic or psychopathic or borderline or histrionic. So any of those pieces of the puzzle are there. And really the reason that I created the term hijackals is related to your question, because I found too many people were going to the internet and they were putting in what they were experiencing, but they were treating the internet as though it were a mental health professional. So they were taking what came from the internet as a diagnosis of this person they had in mind. And that's not fair for two reasons. First of all, those are patterns, traits, and cycles. They may or may not be a personality disorder. And secondly, when you decide that the other person is the one with the entire problem, you take yourself out of the equation and you forget you're the one with them. So let's talk about hijackals. Because hijackals then are something we can talk about: patterns, traits, cycles, behaviors. And my definition of a hijackal is a person who hijacks a relationship for his or her own purposes and then relentlessly scavenges it for power, status, and control. So it doesn't matter whether they have a diagnosis. If they do those things, we're talking about hijackals. And so I absolutely agree. I mean, narcissism has become everybody's favorite word, like, oh yeah, I had one too. Well, you may or may not have. The fact of the matter is you may have gone from something as benign as, they always want everything their way, which may or may not be narcissistic behavior, to full-blown problems. So some of the things you're going to watch out for: always having to win. Doesn't matter whether you're talking about the weather, you're talking about what you're having for dinner, or what you had yesterday. They have to be right. They have to win. And if 10 minutes later they have to say the opposite in order to win, they'll do that too. So that's a real hijackal behavior. So therefore, the caveat of that is you're always going to be wrong. Everything is going to be your fault, and you are always wrong. You are always less than. You're going to be belittled, devalued, put down, worn down, torn down, and the other person has to feel on top. Now, don't put your compassion hat on, but people who behave like that are very fragile and they're very afraid. So they become these bigger than life personalities who running scared means they have to have power over everybody else. You didn't create them, so if you meet them, you don't have to fix them. Just walk away. Good idea.
And that is easier said than done for a lot of people. You made an interesting comment to me a minute ago. You said that they're not the only part of the equation here. And there's a reason why we gravitate towards hijackals in the first place. And what does that say about us? So can you speak a little bit to that?
Sure, if we were raised in a home where we weren't welcomed by joy, as my friend Gary Salyer says, if we weren't welcomed by joy, if the person that is called our parent or either one of our parents does not have a healthy relationship with themselves or did not have good modeling and parenting, they may not bond with us. They may not be interested in us. They may neglect us. They may also find us to be problematic. You know, if you have a hijackal parent, they want three things when they have a child. They want they have a child, so they'll have someone to agree with them, someone to serve them, and someone to make them look good.
Mm.
And if as a child you don't do any of those three, you're going to hear about it and be dismissed or made wrong or all the things I was just speaking about. So if you have a hijackal parent, you are going to be likely to go in one of two directions. You will either be like them because that will, you think, please them, or you're going to become extremely malleable and you're going to be trying to please them. And that turns you into your dating life into being hijackal bait. That means that other hijackals have already, wow, this person's groomed. I don't have to do all the work. They're going to put up with my nonsense. They're not going to question me when I have ultimate authority and I want things my way. They're going to try really hard to please me. And perfect. Got a live one here.
Yeah. You know, it was once said that nobody can be kinder than the narcissist while you react to life in his or her terms. What happens to the ego when somebody starts to use their voice and say, I'm no longer tolerating this. I'm getting healthier and therefore I'm not tolerating some of these behaviors. What happens to the hijackal?
Well, first of all, they get really scared. And in that scared, they try to suppress you. So, first of all, they're going to try and put you down and make you stop and try and be logical and reasonable and tell you not to. And if that doesn't work, they're going to get angry and then maybe they'll rage and maybe they'll do the silent treatment. Maybe they'll go off for a while. Maybe they'll discard you. All of those things could happen. It all depends at which level they are. And if they're terribly afraid of losing their supply, they may love bomb you. They may come back and start treating you just like they did on the first day you met when you were absolutely sure they could read you like a book and they were your soulmate. So there's a full range of things that will happen when you start to distance yourself from a hijackal. If there are children present, it is more likely that they are going to become demanding because they want to show that they are the ones that deserve to have the children. So things can go in a very, very sad direction at that point.
Do you think that right now, you know, we're experiencing COVID, people are quarantined. We already know that domestic violence statistics and divorce rates are skyrocketing. Um, do you think that, well, tell me what your experiences has been in terms of the clients that you work with and the stories that you're hearing right now.
Well, it's not rocket science, is it, Sherry? That if you find yourself 24/7 with somebody that you have been trying really hard not to have more than 2 out of 24 with, you're going to have trouble with it.
Right.
And it's going to put the problem front and center, like something has to give here. something has to change, something has to be done. So certainly, I have clients all over the world, and I am busier than I have ever been. And I think it has to do with proximity. Hijackals are proximate to you. They're not present with you. So when they are proximate to you, then you get to observe them up close and personal on a far too frequent basis for some people. And so then you can't avoid or deny the behaviors, or avoid or deny how you feel in their presence, or what they say and what the reaction you have to what they do and say. And you really get to be pressed to give it a name, to actually acknowledge that it's there. And maybe it's time that I handled this.
Yeah. And I think a lot of people are asking that question right now. The distractions, the being able to get away aren't there right now. So what other choice do you have than to see it up close and personal, and maybe even name it in some situations? Mom, did you have a question?
Yeah, I did. First of all, she's describing my 31 years of marriage, and I I wasn't able to set boundaries for many, many years. I'm much better about that now. How do you set healthy boundaries? How do you even start for people that don't really know? They're listening to this and go, I don't even
Mhm.
know how to do that.
Well, it starts when I'm helping my clients, I have them start internally to
Oh,
be able to notice what's okay with me, what's not okay, to be able to articulate what it is that is not okay. Because frequently it's just like this amorphous feeling, like that feels bad, right? But you have to know, what is it that is really bothering me? So learn how to articulate and clarify the feeling that you're having and what's causing it. And then you can start to say, I don't like this, so I need to say, this is all right with me, that's not all right with me. To know what that is, what that boundary is, you can express it. You can say, I really appreciate when this happens, but when this happens, that's not all right with me. And maybe I can say, I go into withdrawal, or I get angry, or all. So I would really like that boundary to be honored. Now, a hijackal doesn't care much about that, but you need to care, because we need to feel empowered by knowing what our boundaries are, expressing and clarifying them, maintaining them, repeating them, and if we have to repeat them more than twice, having consequences and making sure that the consequences actually happen. So it's not for the hijackal's point of view, it's for the non-hijackal who needs the boundaries. The hijackal is not interested at all, and they will get quite put out when you start expressing boundaries. So we start really small, just in tiny ways. You might say, I feel a lot better when I'm spoken to in this way. And you just deliver it in a neutral, authentic tone, and you see if it lands anywhere good. And if it doesn't, then, maybe you escalate that a little bit. But it's a feedback loop for you, so that you feel empowered as to how you can speak up. And as I say, I always have people begin by just saying it internally.
exactly. So what would be an example of a consequence?
If this disrespect continues with loud words of profanity, I'm going to walk into the other room and not return for 2 hours.
Oh, wow. Awesome. Okay.
It has to be clear, it has to be time bound, it has to be something you're willing to do. Now, again, the truth is, Jen, that they will follow you into wherever it is you're going, and they'll pound on the door, and they'll try to do all kinds of things. So you probably want to make it, as clean and clear as you can. I'm going to get in my car, I'm going to go to visit my friend, and I'll be back in a couple of hours. We never want to tie into someone's fear of abandonment. Every one of us has two fears, the fear of falling and the fear of abandonment. And that's because when we're born, we realize that we're not like horses and cows. We don't get spit out of our mother and licked off, and then we leap up and run around the meadow and can find food and water and all that good stuff. We know we can't. We innately know we can't. So we're afraid of being abandoned. So when you walk away from a hijackal is highly sensitive to that. And so we don't trigger their fear of abandonment to the best of our ability. We tell them that we're leaving. We tell them when we'll return. And in any healthy relationship, if you need to get away, it's always important to say, I'm leaving for this reason. I need to cool down. I need to collect my thoughts. I will be back, though, in a couple of hours, and I'll be willing to talk about it. That's emotionally mature. The slam the door and you can wonder if I'm ever coming back.
Yeah, right.
That's emotionally immature.
Gotcha.
I like those strategies and their what you do after the fact, after you've been yelled at, after you've been had a door slammed in your face. Is there anything to front loading before you start a conversation or sit down at dinner together to front load expectations with a hijackal?
Well, their expectation is that you're going to do what they want you to do if you're wise.
Right.
And so I don't know that you can front load it before you sit down at the dining table, but certainly as you start to turn a corner and want to empower yourself again, you have to learn to do some things like deliver again in that neutral, authentic tone. You know, actually, I didn't say that. I recall exactly what I did say.
Mhm.
You know, to be able to say things like that with some sense of assurance instead of like, did I say it? Didn't I say it? What'll happen if I don't agree? Well, to come to that neutral place where you can just say, no, I remember exactly what I said and it wasn't that. And not to have it, game on, fight on, just to learn to be able to say, I'm fully present and I'm going to take up space on my side of the table. I am not going to be regressing and pulling myself away because you want to take up more space. So these are important things in what you're calling front loading, if I understand it
Mhm.
correctly, because you just want to start changing your mindset, changing your attitude, changing the way that you occupy space in the relationship, because their whole intention is to marginalize you, to make your opinion much less important than theirs or your desire or your feelings. They're not much interested in your feelings. You've probably noticed how very inconvenient that you have feelings, because only what they want matters. So you have a feeling, oh, you poor thing. Um, but it is important for you when you're learning to take up this space and occupy that space to be able to say neutral, authentic things. They like to gaslight,
Yeah.
which, that means that they want to define your reality for you. They want to tell you what you remember. They want to tell you what you felt. They want to tell you what you think. And so, an example of being able to be authentic and neutral is to say, actually, that's not what I feel. If you'd like to know, ask me.
Wow.
And that's really powerful when you just
Mhm.
deliver it with no energy at all. Just, actually, no, that's not how I feel, but I'd be happy to tell you if you're interested.
Mhm.
They're not interested. But you are building your muscles back up to say, I'm going to take up half the space in this relationship. I need to do that. I need to know that I have that right. I have the right to take up space and draw breath. I tell my people all the time, first of all, you have to accord yourself the right to take up space and draw breath on this earth.
Yeah.
Now, for many people, they don't, because they come from backgrounds where they're really kind of apologizing for their taking breath, right? Their very presence, they're not sure. They've had experiences in their younger life that say, hey, you stay against the wall over there. So we have to learn to recognize that we deserve to take up space and draw breath. And then I have a technique that I write about in Kaizen for couples called the personal weather report. And I developed it about 27 years ago because I did not like the prevailing communication thing. Everybody was teaching iMessages, and I did not like it. Sam, I am. I just didn't like it. So I said, no, I'm not teaching that. There has to be a better way. So I developed the personal weather report. And basic to that is the idea of my definition of assertiveness. And that is that you believe you deserve to take up space and draw breath, and therefore you have the absolute right to say what you think, feel, need, and want, prefer, and remember, as long as you do not mention another human by name or pronoun.
Okay.
Wow.
So give us an example of how that sounds.
I was really delighted with what happened last night, and a couple of things that made me feel extremely good, and I would love it if those things continued.
Okay.
Or, right now I just feel really disrespected. I just do, and it doesn't feel good. I'm entitled to say how I feel. I'm entitled to say what I'm thinking. And that's a very important thing. But if I say another person's name or use a pronoun for them, that can be read as veiled blame or straight up blame. And that doesn't go well. So if you just start practicing having the right to say what's so for you without mentioning another human, you'll find that that is extremely empowering. It's extremely clarifying. You'll find it easier to set boundaries and to give voice to boundaries without any insecurity or anxiety.
I like that.
Without sounding just totally black and white in my thought here, uh, do you think that a hijackal can change? Do you think if they have the say again?
No.
No,
It's that old joke, Jan. How many psychotherapists does it take to change a light bulb? Only one, but the light bulb has to really want to change.
correct.
Well, a hijackal has no interest in changing. Now, that said, there are a few people that I have met in my practice um, that have what's called, if you're talking about the narcissistic language, you talk about narcissistic fleas, but the same thing, hijackal fleas. That means that they've been around a hijackal or they were raised by one. And so they do things the way the hijackal did, but they're unaware of it. And when they become aware of it, they are horrified and they want to change. In a few rare instances, that's really what's going on. They need new skills. They need new insights. And they do want to change because they don't know how they come across. I just came off a call with a client and I said to him, have you ever looked in the mirror and smiled at yourself? And he said, why do you ask? I said, because nothing happens in your face. I have no idea if you're happy, sad, glad, mad, nothing. And he said, yeah, people tell me I always look mad. So I said, while your wife's away, here's your homework. Practice in the bathroom mirror saying, how do I look when I'm happy? How do I want to look when I'm happy? So that we can train the muscles to match what our feeling is, so very, very important.
So a hijackal probably wouldn't even have asked you the question. They wouldn't have even say, why did you ask? They wouldn't care.
No, they don't
So
care.
this person or people like this person, they're wanting to know that there's a glimmer of wanting to know,
Hmm.
right?
Yes, I mean, you can quickly tell if somebody, I can quickly tell, I'll just say that,
Yeah.
if somebody is wanting to change. And it has to be very carefully calibrated. And that's why it's really important, if you think you're with one of these people, to go to someone like me who specializes and does nothing else but that. Because I get clients all the time saying, I've been to 5 or 6 therapists with my partner, and they didn't get it. They ended up siding with the hijackal, because of course the hijackal goes in thinking, I'm going to exploit and seduce the therapist into my point of view. I'm going to get them on my side, and now we're going to go after the partner. So then it becomes a 2-for-1 situation, and the person who went to be understood, to have somebody see the nightmare that they're living, didn't didn't have it seen at all. So it becomes extremely important to work with someone who understands these things and can pick those up, because the hijackal situation, they have no intention of changing. But if they happen to be in that sort of cusp place where they've only picked up hijackal fleas, they will be like, somebody turned a light on. Like, there's some other way I could do this. I had no idea. And yes, there are the pretenders in the middle, the ones who tell me one thing and then go and do the other. And usually, when I'm interviewed on a podcast, the last thing a podcaster will say to me is, do you have something you'd like to leave the audience with? Some nugget, some bit
Yeah.
of wisdom. And I always say this: yes, my formula, ABB. Here's the second most important thing I can teach any human, in my opinion: ABB. Always believe behavior. I don't care what the person says. If it doesn't match their behavior, believe the behavior. And that's where we have to start learning about hijackals, because they'll say something, but they'll behave differently. And the
Oh, wow.
behavior is the truth.
That, oh my word, that is so profound, because they can be really charming, and they can turn it on you that before you even know what hit you,
Oh,
and then
yes.
you're just going, what, boy, yeah, you just you don't know how to get out of that barrel, that they just threw you in, you know.
Well, they're counting on that. They're counting on you being overwhelmed by their charm, by their supposed knowledge of you, by their ability to read you, by their leaning in and wanting to please you. All of those things are just what someone in the dating world is looking for, or in a selling situation, or in any situation. If you want to have some fun sometime, just go to the internet and look up careers of psychopaths. You'll be shocked. But they
Wow.
behave that way because they're drawn to those careers because they have power over other humans, right? So it's important for us to realize that there are other people in the world who want to have power over us. And our task is to figure out who they are, and then say, oh, not without my permission and my not covert position, my permission, but my absolute agreement in words, not just come along and charm me and exploit me and seduce me into believing that, because that person that you meet, that love bombing person that you meet, that person doesn't exist. And it's really hard for people to understand that, because they get hooked on the hope that that's the real person. And then if only they make themselves a little less, or they're less demanding, or less nagging, or more patient, or prettier, or slimmer, or quieter, or whatever, if they only make themselves into a pretzel and eventually a doormat, then that magical person they fell in love with will come back. And you have to realize that person didn't exist. They made that person up to kind of just figure out how to get you. and they're good at that. They have your number. It's almost like they have pheromones that they can smell you. And so they lean in and they do their thing, and you think, oh, just what I've been longing for. And you don't read the signs correctly because you've got your rose-colored glasses on. And when you have rose-colored glasses on, it's really hard to see red flags.
Oh, absolutely. What is it about the narcissist who picks out the, you know, the union of the two, you know, you've got your narcissist and you've got the person that's just trying to dance as fast as they can, you know, to oh, that person that person never finds closure. You can't find closure with a narcissist
You know, you
or
can't nail anything down because they keep moving the markers. I mean, if you have a hijackal parent and they say, you know, here's what you need to do to get my approval, pretty much. And so you do that and you think, oh, now they're going to approve of me. Oh, no. Well, that was nice, dear, but do this. And they're always moving the markers. It's always that dance. And you know, that is something that if you're groomed to dance like that, when someone else does that, it's comfortably uncomfortable, but it's familiar to you. And that's why if you had a parent who had hijackal tendencies, it's going to be familiar to you when you meet someone and you think, oh, I don't like that, but I kind of know what to do with it. I kind of
yep.
know who to be. And
Hmm.
so you dance with that, and it's exhausting. And they dance on your feet. And pretty soon they throw you to the side and they go dancing with someone else. But you're laying there going, well, maybe they'll come back and dance with me. You know, maybe I'll work on myself and I'll be everything they ever wanted. No, no, no. What they're doing is collecting supply. And you're exhausted supply. So they've gone off. You're no fun anymore because you're not a conquest anymore. And so they'll go off and find supply or groom supply. Maybe they won't cheat in their relationship, but they'll groom supply. They'll be emotionally unfaithful. They'll have people they flirt with. They'll have people that they could go and pick up if they wanted to at some later date.
You know, I have a lot of clients who are living with a hijackal, and the first thing out of their mouth is, I feel like I'm going crazy. I can't even trust my own thoughts anymore. Maybe I am all the things he says I am. Maybe this is about me. I need to untwist my mind. I learned in my own experience early on with my dad that I had to write things down, because I was constantly questioning, well, maybe I didn't say that, or maybe I didn't think that. And so I had to have sort of a running record for myself that I could go back and refer to. What do you say to people that express that craziness and they don't know where to start?
Well, of course, it's crazy making. I mean, even one of the books that I wrote is called Stop, That's Crazy Making, How to Quit Playing the Passive Aggressive Game. Because passive aggressive behaviors are crazy making, and all hijackals are passive aggressive. But not all passive aggressive people are hijackals. So, you know, you were saying that you wrote things down. Well, I would expect, Sherry, that if you brought that piece of writing or a tape recording or whatever people like to do, and you play it and say, no, you said that, they'll say, that's ridiculous. You're just using that against me. You're trying to make a point. Or I didn't actually say that. I mean, they'll just deny it.
Yeah.
They have to win. They absolutely have to win. You know, you've seen things on television where somebody says, you said this yesterday, and they say, no, I didn't. And then they play the tape and they say, you know, well, the media is always out to get me, because they don't want to admit that even the tape exists that they said it. So this is the kind of thing that we see frequently. And when we're with one of them, they have no interest in your notes. So it is crazy making. And this is where you have to start understanding that you do deserve to take up space and draw breath, and that you do deserve to recognize and say, I don't think I like that behavior, as opposed to, what can I do to avoid that behavior? I can stop approving of the behavior. And that's a great start. Do you like that? I had a hijackal mom, and she was very overt, and I had a hijackal father who was extremely covert and passive aggressive. My father died first, only child. I took care of both of them till they died. 5 years later, my mother died. At that time, I owned a holistic health and yoga retreat center where I had my private practice. And so I took all the photographs from my mother and father's collection and mine, and I made albums for my 3 kids. And I was sitting there at the end of that, and I thought, I've got all these photographs out. At least once a week, my mother used to say to me, it's a good thing you're smart, young lady, because you're fat and ugly. And I thought, I'm going to go looking for evidence of fat and ugly. Now, I might be delusional, but I didn't find any. So I was sitting there thinking, okay, what is it really? Didn't like my mother. My mother was racist. My mother was devious. My mother was manipulative. She was all kinds of other things. So I started thinking about it. I don't like her. And then I remembered 3 days before she died, I put my hand over hers, because of course she wouldn't touch me. I put my hand over hers and I said, Mom, you've never told me that you love me. And she's lying on the bed, and she looked down her nose and she said, I know. So as I'm sitting there having this recollection, I had this big aha. At the time I was traveling all over speaking, and I shared this with women everywhere. And the aha was this, that there was a part of me that was seeking the approval of someone of whom I didn't approve.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
And when you actually inhabit that thought, it straightens you out. Because, those clients that are coming to you are saying this is crazy making, they need to get to that place of saying, what do I think about that other person, that person I'm in relationship with? Do I think they're all that in a bag of chips? No, I don't. I don't like them. I don't care for them. Well, why are you so concerned about them liking you? Why are you dancing to their tune? Why are you trying to come up to their standards if you don't even like them? If you don't approve of them? If you don't think they're doing a good job of living? That's where you can make the difference.
Why do we do that?
Because we've been conditioned to do that. We're dancing as fast as we can. And then we learn to do what I call dancing for two. I'm not only trying to figure me out and do me, but I'm trying to figure you out too. And where do I need to be? And how will it work? And how can I pre-think what you're pre-thinking in order to be ready for you? So we're dancing for two. And we learn to do that when we're children if we've had a hijackal parent. And so when we're in a relationship with a hijackal, or we've fallen in love with one, or been consumed into love by one, or sucked into love by one, manipulated into love by one, we don't want to be wrong, right? We don't want to be wrong. We want to think, oh, I can make this work. All I have to do is cut off one arm and a foot, and maybe I'll fit into that. And so we want to then realize that we're not fully empowered. We don't believe that we deserve to take up space and draw breath in this earth. I started yoga when I was 19 years old. So nobody in North America seemed to know anything about it, but I was very fascinated by it. So our first chakra is exactly that, knowing that you deserve to take up space and draw breath. You have the right to exist. And if you've been taught that your right to exist is conditional on making a hijackal parent happy, of course you're going to be hijackal bait. because you're waiting for other people to validate you and telling you you're all right, because it's not coming from within yet. So then our task as therapists and relationship consultants is to say, okay, I need to get you some help so that you can validate yourself, that you can say, I am worthwhile. The thoughts that I have are valid. When I think that he's behaving or she's behaving badly, I don't ask, are they behaving badly? I'm allowed to say, I think they're behaving badly, and I don't care for it. And we have to move in that direction.
So as we wrap up here, the people at home that are listening to this, maybe still in quarantine, what is, and maybe this is a new concept to some folks listening, what is 2, 3 red flags that they should be watching for to answer the question, I wonder if I live with a hijackal?
Well, first of all, if you find yourself walking on eggshells, which is a terrible way to get your exercise, that would be a good red flag. You know, if that person is coming by or coming home and you're like, what are they going to find fault with? What do I need to do? You know, do I look all right? Is the house all right? Are the kids all right? What should I be prepared for? If you're living in chronic anxiety and concern and stress like that, there is a big red flag,
Yeah.
right? Because somebody else is more important than you are.
Right.
And what they need and what they feel and what they might say is more important than what it is that you need or feel or say. So that's certainly a big red flag. Another one is if that other person, as I said earlier, always makes you wrong, always finds fault with you. You know, it's like the child who comes home with a report card full of A's and 1 B plus. The hijackal focuses on what happened to the B plus. The non-hijackal says, wow, look at all those A's. So if you're living with somebody who always sees the dark side and the downside because they want to get you, I call that in Kaizen and Escaping the Hijackal Trap book, I call that the gotcha factor. If they're always looking for the gotcha factor, how to make you wrong, how to catch you out. You know, on my podcast, Save Your Sanity, I just did an episode called The Difference Between Verifying and Validating. Verifying is looking to find out, how can I make this person wrong? How can I make them inaccurate? How can I make them unjustified? Validating is saying, I think you're absolutely wonderful, and maybe you don't have your facts straight.
Oh, wow.
So eggshells, walking on eggshells, you're with somebody who always has to find the wrong and the fault in everything that you're doing. Any others?
Yes, there are a lot of them. Actually, I have a whole e-course that people can take called Seeing the Cycles. But if you ever have this feeling, then it's a good red flag, which is they do or say something, and internally you're going, who says that? Who does that?
That's a good one.
You know, if that happens, then you're in the incredulity understanding. Like, healthy people, wise people, kind people, loving people, they don't do that. And then you'll find you immediately start justifying, oh, well, they had a bad day. Maybe they're busy. They're feeling a little stressed. And you start dancing for two. You start making up excuses why they're behaving badly. And that's a big red flag.
Where do people go to find out more about you? Or I think you've got a couple of PDFs that people can download for free.
I have one that I'd love for everybody to have, and it's called How to Spot a Hijackal.
Perfect.
So that will help you as your first step. If this is sounding at all familiar for a parent, a partner, a sibling, a friend, you want to go and find out, are we really talking hijackal here? And that's at hijackals.com. So you spell that hijack, ALS.com. And you'll also find it when you go to my website, forrelationshiphelp.com, FOR relationship, HELP.com, which also happens to be the name of my YouTube channel, For Relationship Help.
Boy, you don't do much, do you?
Well, I do a lot, and it's really exciting because I people ask me all the time, when are you going to retire? And I say, I am retired. And they say, you work all the time. But my definition of retirement is the time of life when you get to do exactly what you want to do all day. And that's what I'm doing. This work still floats my boat and flips my skirt. And I look forward to getting up every morning and doing it. So doing the podcast, doing all the videos, doing all those things, and having people all over the world write and say, oh, I'm so glad you said that, or I'm so glad I found that, or I had no idea what I was dealing with. I mean, that's a gift. That's a gift that you can give people when they're up in the middle of the night chewing their fingernails down to the quick, feeling isolated and marginalized. You're not alone. There, this is a real thing. I had a new client say to me yesterday, I didn't know it was a thing. It's a
It,
thing.
it is. And that's what it was reminding me of. It's like having an illness that's undiagnosed, and how relieved you are when there's a name put to it, because okay, now I know what I'm dealing with. Now, but
Exactly.
it's the searching for the name for the illness that's not diagnosed, or
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's insanity. It feels like insanity to you,
Well,
it
it
does
helps
make
to have a frame to put
hmm
around something, to say, all right, when you look at that free ebook, How to Spot a Hijackal, oh yeah, that happens, and that happens, and that happens, and I feel just like that. Oh, I'm not alone. It really is like that. I mean, even
yeah.
somebody could write a little book about it to say these things are real, and that's very validating because you're so isolated and you're being told you're crazy. How many
hmm
times do people say to me, how do I know I'm not the hijackal? And I'll say, because you just asked that question.
yeah, exactly.
Exactly.
Yeah, and you can't change what you don't know.
Yeah,
You can't change what you don't know.
exactly. And now you know.
I know, right? Oh, wow.
Before mom signs us out today, I have one more question for you. In your own healing journey, when did you finally get to the point where you were able to say to yourself, I'm free from the chains of this that got passed down to me, that I had to live with, that I didn't understand? I mean, you were young, so at
Well,
what age were you able to find some freedom for yourself?
well, I'll answer that in a couple of ways. First of all, I happen to be just this really bright-eyed, bushy-tailed little kid who looked at these two people and said, "You're nuts." you know, I just happened to recognize that you don't make any sense at all. So I was fortunate in that way, right? That even though I was an only child having to live within this, I knew there was something wrong with them. That didn't mean that they didn't put their tentacles around my soul, and I had to find ways to unpack that.
Right.
So of course, I was raised in it. I knew it was crazy, but there was no validation for it being crazy. I lived in a small town. I went to talk to somebody about it. And of course, as I say in my books all the time, hijackals paint a public picture of perfection, and at home they create a private place of pain. So in my little town, I go off and I say, I don't know if I can stay till I graduate from high school because my mother's like this. And the counselor looked at me and said, how can you speak of your mother like that? She's the salt of the earth. She's the fundraiser for hospice. That's what happens to people.
Yeah.
Now they're made wrong because the public picture of perfection of someone, and that public picture of perfection can be that they're sitting right there with you in the counselor's office telling you how wonderful they are and putting on a great show of being wonderful. And then there's the counselor is saying to you, well, look, I mean, this person's whole and healthy and able to articulate everything, and you're a quivering mass. What's up with you? So, so that's very important to finally realize that, you know, there were no people who could help me. I finally had to figure it out and get help later. But you know, when I was young, there was no help. But I started realizing that I'm not like them,
Mm.
and that was a good start.
Yeah.
And to answer your question, I don't think you're ever really done, but you can be totally functional if you have a lot of experience and very specialized help. You can get to a place where you know that you can think your way out of any of that thinking that comes from that. But it'll still happen to you because it happened prior to your parietal and prefrontal lobe development when you were raised by hijackals. So the emotional hooks are all there. They were put in before you had rational linear thought. So you can still, when you have anxiety or you have maybe chronic stress or something, you can still be triggered by it. But when you get good help, you can recognize what it is, you can replace those thoughts, you can choose again how you view it, and you can talk to yourself so that you can move on in a healthy way. So you can do a whole lot of healing, and there'll still be moments.
That's hopeful. Thank you. Do check out Dr. Shaler's website. There are a ton of resources and ideas for how to spot someone in your life that might be a hijackal and how to start the journey to your own healing. I appreciate you being on today.
Thank you so much.
Listeners, thank you for joining us. Dr. Rhoberta, thank you so much. What a gift to have you on and to hear your expertise. Very much appreciated. We can be located, Sherry and I can be located on the traumaspeakers.com, where you can find our book, and you can also check out our speaking and coaching packages there.
Thanks so much. Everybody stay well, take care of yourself, love yourself, stay well.